It is also my pleasure to welcome you to this special occasion, and I'm doing so on behalf of Dr. Pickering and the Pickering family. We're happy that you're here. You're all our honored guests. This is indeed a wonderful occasion, and I am hoping that you're feeling the excitement that I am. But before we begin, I will invite Dr. the Reverend Michael Turnbull, and he will be doing the invocation for us. Melvin Turnbull, sorry.
Don't worry about it. You are forgiven. If you could stand, would you kindly stand with me? Before I pray, it's necessary that I say one or two words. First, I want to congratulate my friend and brother. We go back a long way. One of the things that I continually rejoice in and I'm proud about, more than anything else, amidst all the things he has accomplished, is his growth in faith. I had the opportunity, and I still do, to observe him and watch him on a regular basis as he grows in faith. And that, to me, gives me the most pleasure. Thank you, sir, for being obedient. And I want to also just thank his lovely wife. She's a gem. I want to thank her for smoothing him out and making him fine. Yes, I have the right to speak. I got the mic, sir. And I just want to thank her for being such a prayer warrior and a strong support. So even though you often see and hear him, that's the lady behind him. A tower of strength. So thank you, Lady Pickering, and to the rest of the family. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Father, your word says that we, your servants, are partakers of the inheritance and treasures of heaven. You have delivered us from the authority of darkness and translated us into the kingdom of your dear Son, Jesus the Christ, Yeshua. Father, where your word is, there is light and also understanding. Your word does not return to you void, but always accomplishes what it was sent to do. We are joint heirs with Jesus. And as your sons and daughters, we accept that communication of our faith is effectual by the acknowledging of every good work that is in us in Christ Jesus. We pray now for our friend and brother Kedrick. As you have guided his hand in medicine, continue now to brighten his steps of faith. Thank you for giving him yet another platform to show forth your glory. Remind him that platforms change, but your purpose for him is always to lift you up. And whenever you are lifted up, you draw others to yourself. And so, Father, since you are effectually at work in him, cause his thoughts to become agreeable with your will, so that his business plans shall be established and continue to succeed. May he submit to every kind of wisdom, practical insight, and prudence, which you have lavished upon him in accordance with the riches and generosity of your gracious favor. Father, I affirm that Kedrick obeys your word by making an honest living with his hands so that he is able to give to those in need. In your strength and according to your grace, he provides for himself and his own family. Thank you, Father, for making all grace, every favor, and earthly blessing come to him in abundance, that in having all sufficiency and contentment may abound to every good word and work. Father, thank you for the ministering spirits that you have assigned to go forth to bring others into this walk of faith and medicine as they face their worst nightmares, experience joy, sorrow, and pain, struggle to maintain their dignity and trust their conscience, face terminal illnesses and uncertainty, and even the challenge to decide yes or no, or simply to wait in faith for the divine. Thank you for the grace to remain humble and diligent in seeking knowledge and skill. I ask you for wisdom and the ability to understand righteousness, justice, and fair dealing in every area and relationship for my brother. I affirm that he's faithful and committed to your word. His life and mission are founded upon principles, and his steps are ordered by you. Thank you for the success of this book, this new platform, and its outreach as your witness in Jerusalem, all over Judea, Samaria, and even to the ends of the world. In Jesus' name, and all who agree say, Amen.
Thank you. Remain standing, please. I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Melvin Turnbull. And we'll now invite Ms. Kyla Thomas, who will be performing the territorial song for us.
Out of the huts of history's veins, our ancestors bled and died. But with strength and willpower we overcame to restore Virgin Islands' pride. To preserve the beauty we devised a plan to retain ownership of this precious land. Educating your people is the golden key to maintain the success of this territory. Oh, how radiant are your daughters, and how wealthy are your sons. Your beaches boast your beauty, and your success is second to none. Green and brilliant are your hillsides, they replenish our hopes and pride. Oh, beautiful Virgin Islands, your qualities can never be denied. Oh, beautiful Virgin Islands, your qualities can never be denied.
Thank you, Kyla. You may be seated. Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to invite remarks from the editor of the book, and I want you to put your hands together. She's going to join us via Zoom and make welcome Miss Carrie Cohan. Carrie.
Did you hear any of that? Can't hear you. Sorry, I can't hear you. Well, shall I chat? Shall I go ahead and talk? I can't hear you, but maybe you can hear me. Yeah, I'll look in the chat. Yes, okay. Wonderful. Okay, so we can hear you. Yay! My name is Carrie Cohan, and I'm actually the publisher of Dr. Kedrick Pickering's amazing book. I was saying that I met him a mere 6 months ago, actually, in Los Angeles at a Lisa Nichols event. And when I first met him, I thought he was a man of few words, and I was a little apprehensive when he said that he wanted to birth this book. His big goal was to create this book and birth it. And I thought, well, he was a man of such few words. And I realized that it was a reminder that when someone is of few words, listen to them. Listen to what they have to say. Because when they do speak, their words have been measured and weighed. And so the wisdom is full and the value is there. And so that's what I discovered with Dr. Kedrick Pickering, was that what he did have to share was absolutely incredible. I had never considered what a physician would go through, in a stillbirth situation, or not even just a physician. He speaks of his entire team, his crew, and the nursing staff and administration and everyone. So the book I found as I was editing it and working with Kedrick on it, he was so profound in his words. It was amazing, and it opened up a whole world to me that I didn't even consider. So what he did in, like I say, the 6 short months, he started from, we started right at the very beginning, where we had to go into sentence structure and paragraphs and how to, he started right from scratch. And gosh, every month would go by and he would say, so how am I doing? And I'd say, actually, it is phenomenal. He is a gifted author, gifted writer, and the indication of that is confirmed by the amount of sales and the people that are supporting him around the world. He is an international best-selling author now in 7 countries around the world, and the book has done phenomenally well. So a big congratulations to Dr. Kedrick Pickering. Well done. You are my best student ever. Your dedication and your determination was bar none. So well done. There we go. I wish I could hear everyone. So I will say goodbye now because I can't actually hear anyone, but much love to all of you. And thank you again, Kedrick, for having faith and doing all that you did. You're going to change humanity with this book. I can actually see this book being used in medical schools because you address what's not taught. You address a whole part of medicine that isn't spoken about and isn't taught. So I would love to see, your book take on a whole new life as an instructional guide as well. So much love, everyone. Bye now.
Hi, we're not hearing.
Good afternoon. Hello, hello, hello. You can hear me? Yes? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Kedrick Pickering. Dr. Pickering. Testing. Testing, testing, testing. Dr. Kedrick Pickering, according to June Samuel. That's what I'm here. I'm not the guest speaker. I'm just giving brief remarks. So first of all, I want to express my sincerest congratulations to Dr. Pickering on this occasion. And this is on behalf of the BVI HSA team, the board, the management. He is one of us. He has remained one of us. He has not left us. And so I am very honored to be here to give remarks on this occasion. I must admit feeling a bit intimidated on learning that I had to bring remarks. So I wasn't sure what I was meant to say, but I'll give you my perspective on Dr. Pickering. So Dr. Pickering is our elder physician and on staff. And that's an honored role. But he is currently the only BVI Lander physician from that original group of doctors that I can remember from my younger days. Dr. Smith, Dr. Bruley, rest in peace, Dr. O'Neill, and Dr. Potter. Those are the BVI Landers who Dr. Vanterpool Heskett, right, who laid the foundation, and they were the original group, I think, of persons who were sent away by the BVI government and returned and worked in the facility when we were a very small facility down on the other side. For persons who now tend to criticize and talk negatively about the hospital, you would need to have a conversation with Dr. Pickering and that group, because you have to understand where we are coming from. I remember it when I came back from my internship and I worked in the emergency room, which was a one-room unit in the old building. And when you remember where we are coming from and where we are now, all I can say is, to God be the glory. And often when I feel discouraged in this work, a little chat with Dr. Pickering will put things into perspective. He's very candid, and he has a way of telling you things that makes you realize that, well, you're actually not too bad off. He is a BVI HSA staple, as I said before, and all throughout his political career, he stayed with us. If we were short-staffed and needed help, we could call Dr. Pickering, and he would help us. He never said no. And that, I certainly appreciated in my days as Chief of Medical Staff. I remember Dr. Pickering in Jamaica first, because clearly I'm a young person, right? So in Jamaica, somewhere around 1986, that's when I was there, and then he came up to do his postgraduate work. And at that time, I don't know if, well, some of you in here know Dr. Pickering then, he was very particular about his eating. Well, I don't know about that. He only ate fish. And he very quickly became a part of my batch family in Jamaica, which consisted of Hazel Laws, who is now the CMO in St. Kitts, and Joy St. John, who was the executive director at CAFA, all three of us in Jamaica. And we would cook for Dr. Pickering because he needed to have Tortola food. So I left him in Jamaica somewhere around 1989 because I finished medicine in Barbados. My next encounter with Dr. Pickering, 1994, when I came back home. Working in the emergency room, this young upstart saw one of Dr. Pickering's patients in emergency room. I don't know if you remember this. And I dared to give her sick leave after she had seen Dr. Pickering. Well, let me tell you, Dr. Pickering came to me and we had a conversation. And that was the end of that. Okay. So I understood where he stood, but it was my first lesson in consultation. So, yes, I remember that encounter. Dr. Pickering is my secret weapon, so now it's not a secret. He is a source of great guidance and wisdom because you always have to have an elder to speak to. I had a personal crisis somewhere around 1994, and I don't know if you remember this. I found him in theater and burst out into tears. He's the only person in this room who can say they've seen me crying. And then I had my precious baby, and of course no one else but Dr. Pickering could look after me, right? He is one of the few persons I can turn to when I need advice. And now we understand as we read his book. So I ordered my book and I got it yesterday, so I will get my autograph today. But we see where his faith is at the center of his caring and compassion. And it's not that I didn't know he had faith before, because clearly he grew up with, people of faith. And I've heard him preach. Have you all heard him preach? Yes, so he's a man of faith. But his application to his everyday work is what I think makes the difference. And this is what makes this work that he has written so inspiring. It allows younger physicians like myself to know and understand that faith and medicine do interact and intersect. The practice of our spirituality in medicine allows us to experience what is that verse in the Bible which says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I think as physicians, we're really the only people who understand what that really means. So I'm excited about this new venture, Dr. Pickering, and the impact that it is likely to have. And I look forward to when we use it in medical school to teach about the practice of faith and spirituality in our day-to-day work. And I really want to say congratulations to you, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. June Samuel. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Pickering is a public servant at heart. He has served us as a clinician, as a politician, and now an inspiration. I will share a brief nugget with you. I remember after Irma, and I'm just highlighting how much of a public servant Dr. Pickering is. After Irma, access to the main facility obviously was challenged for persons within his community, especially those who were on medication. Dr. Pickering took it upon himself to come to the pharmacy and collect medication for the persons within his community who he knew would have challenge coming to the facility for meds. That is a true public servant. He is humble, dedicated, and is also a humanitarian at heart and one we should treasure. He is a baby islander, and we all should be proud. Now, his words and inspiration is global, and so we get to share him with the world. And now I also get the opportunity to share him with you one more time. Put your hands together and welcome the man of the hour, Dr. Kedrick Pickering.
Thank you, Damien. And I would be lying if I don't tell you that I'm overwhelmed to see you, and especially you. If I may say so, I think that if my friend Melvin Turnbull had the power, he would have prayed me into heaven this evening. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm, in fact, overwhelmed by the support. 39 years ago, this April, I first came back home and went to look for Dr. Smith and told him I was back. And even he wasn't expecting me. But he welcomed me and our journey began. It has been a long and interesting journey, and I'll share some of that with you. To be standing here this afternoon, having not only published a book, but to hear somebody, that lady who was just speaking, she's Native American from Canada. She lives in Portugal and is actually calling us from the United Kingdom, and owns her own publishing company. And to hear her say that I'm an international bestseller, I'm still trying to figure out what it means. So, I can claim to be the elder statesman of the hospital. That I can claim, because I am. And not just the most senior physician, but there's only one person working in the entire hospital, Ms. Vanderpool, who has been around the hospital as long as I've been, since 1986. So every other person in whatever capacity they work have met me here. So I am in fact the elder statesman of the hospital. And my friend, Mark Vanderpool, who was somewhere there a while ago, was saying, and that deserves a clap. You know, writing a book is obviously a level of commitment that you can't run away from. And when I was deeply enthralled in writing the book, my son said to me, "Daddy, I can see you're really committed to this book." And I said to him, "My son, I went to medical school. They didn't give me my certificate. I studied and passed it, so I understand discipline and commitment." My editor said to me that we could do it in 4 months. If you want to spend your money and keep me on paying me to help you along, that's up to you, but I don't really want your money. I want you to finish the book. And we were committed to get it done within the time that we had it done, and we did it. So it's an accomplishment that, to say that I'm proud of myself would be understating it. The book really tells some stories about our experiences in the health services. More especially, most of the experiences that Dr. Smith and I shared together. And I would have been a little bit disappointed if Dr. Smith didn't show up this afternoon. So I called him a while ago to ask him where was he, just to make sure he hadn't forgotten. And so he's there. Please give Dr. Smith a round of applause. So to be here at this point in time, standing basically on a pinnacle of having published the book and getting accolades is one thing, but I have to remind you, it wasn't always like that. Dr. Samuel just told you, when I came back in 1986, there were 6 doctors on staff, 6. And what Dr. Smith we did at that time, we shared each day. One of us was on call in the little room that most of you remembered down at the bottom there. And most of the time we'd be there till 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you go about your business, and there wouldn't be a doctor on staff physically in the hospital. There'd be the nurses, and if something happened, they'd have to call the doctor on duty to come and see the patient. Fast forward to today. The Health Services Authority, I understand, have a complement of 388 members of staff. 56 of those are physicians. What that says to you is that we've come a mighty long way. And we've toiled, we've worked, but the thing more than anything else is that we were committed to doing the work. Sometimes when I hear the young doctors complaining about how hard they have to work, I pull them aside and have a chat. There are 5, 6 doctors in the department of which I still work along in obstetrics and gynecology, doing the same amount of work that Dr. Smith and I did way back then. But we did it. And so the question you might have to ask is, well, how did we do it? And in more ways than one, that's what the book is about. Never in my wildest dreams would I have conceptualized or even dreamed that we would have a hospital like this. Never, when I came back here almost 40 years ago, could I have dreamed that we would have a facility like this. Well staffed. We now have literally specialists working in all of the major areas of medicine. Back then when Dr. Smith couldn't handle it surgically, the person had to be referred overseas. That was a pretty standard thing for all of us. Nowadays, we have all the specialties working, and through the NHI, we can render care at a much higher level than we did back then. So I want you to recognize the journey that we've come on over these years. And I know if Pastor Mel was preaching, he would say, we've come this far by faith. Lean on the Lord, right? Yeah. That's what the book is about. Have you ever thought what it's really like to be in the operating room 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with somebody bleeding to death? And no matter what you do, right, Sister Boyce? No matter what you do, you can't get the bleeding stopped. And the only thing you could do is pray. Have you ever thought about it? Whether we wanted to or not, we had no choice. And Sister Boyce was one of the backbones. Oh boy, she could pray. Oh, she could pray. Have you ever thought what it's like? You know, somebody go through a normal pregnancy. Healthy, no problems, normal labor, everything going well. Nurse called me, patient is 9 centimeters dilated. We're in the delivery room, patient is pushing, all things are going well, no problems, fetal heart rate is normal. And in between the last 2 contractions, when the baby born, the baby comes out dead. And you can't find an explanation why this baby is dead. And then the burden of responsibility resting on, well, my shoulders, because everybody's looking at me. The patient, the husband, the nurses are lost and bewildered, the staff, everybody trying to understand, well, what went wrong. And that lady screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed. You ever thought what we go through as individuals, how painful an experience, that is? And so that in essence, is what the book tries to capture and to help you to understand and appreciate that somehow, somewhere, although we are stoic in our ways, physicians are human beings too, and they also have feelings that they have to deal with. But let me digress a little bit and tell you about this book and the writing of the book. Because I don't consider, before writing this book, I had real difficulty in writing. My friend Bolo must think I was a dunce, because he tried to teach me so much program that I could use for voice to data, data to voice. He me so this thing so easy, how you can't get it? He make me download this program and that program, by the time me I can't make no headway. I think he think I'm a dunce. Because he's tech savvy, I'm hopeless. My secretary, Michelle Bajan, who worked with me for nearly 20 years and 8 years as my secretary as deputy premier, I mean, she had to write everything for me and then some, because I couldn't type. I couldn't type. I literally was intimidated by the keyboard. Anytime I asked my son something, he said, "Daddy, you ain't learned that yet." And I don't bother ask my wife because she ain't got patience with me. So when I met Carrie at this meeting in June, and we got chatting away, and she asked me, you know, what was my main reason for coming to the conference. I said, I want to learn to write. I want to write because I know I have a lot of stuff inside of me I need to get out. And after about 2 days of interaction, she said, you should hire me to help you write that book. And that's how our journey began. And during the process of our interaction, she said to me, the best books are handwritten. She said, those of us who are in the publishing business can take up a book and can tell you whether the book was handwritten, whether it was dictated, whether it was co-authored, whether it was a ghostwriter, and certainly if it is AI generated. She told me that. She said, those of us in the business can do that. And the best books are handwritten. And whether you believe it or not, I have written every single word of this book with my pen. I wrote it out with my pen. And because I was hell-bent on not asking my wife to help me type nothing, I type it my own self. And wrote I told her I take my own time. In a one finger here and one finger there. I get up 3 o'clock in the morning when I had to reach my deadline, and I type every single word of that book. So I write it out, and then I type it, and then I correct it, and I type it over before I send it to the editor. So by the time, Mike, you'll appreciate it, Dr. O'Neill. By the time I finished writing this book, by the time I sent it out to the editor for her first viewing, I had actually been over it at least 4 times. So it made her life easier in terms of the grammar and the sentence structure because she had taught me all of that. So I took my own time with it, and that's why you see on the cover of the book, she specifically, that was her decision, that the book had no AI input, because most books nowadays, whether you believe it or not, are AI generated. You can literally write a book in days using artificial intelligence. But the genre, the people who know the industry can tell you which is what. So if the book is actually taking off and doing well, then she was right, because the book is definitely handwritten. In addition to all of that, there's a vote of thanks to come, but there's some people I just want to mention who have inspired me along the way. And there's a young lady here who I don't really know much. I knew her by seeing her. She's sitting right there named Maureen Peters. She called me up out of the blue one day, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. She said, Dr. Pickering, I've listened to you speak many times, and I always hear you talking about one of these days you're going to write your memoirs. Is there anything I could do to help you write? Because you seem to have a lot to say. You want it. I'd like to help you to write it. She's a published author herself. I think she's written 2 books. And I said, what a thing, you know? And she doesn't know, her name is in the book, as somebody I acknowledge, you know, saying thanks to, how much that inspired me to go on and write. And I specifically went up my way to invite her today because I wanted to acknowledge her. And then I write in the book acknowledging Mrs. Parsons, Dr. Wheatley, Dr. Michael O'Neill as keepers of the records. These are people who have influenced me in terms of their commitment to telling our story and keeping our history alive. And I mention them as keepers of the records, if you understand what I mean. And when I finally got my hand on the book and I was able to give it to Dr. Smith in his hand and Mrs. Parsons and Dr. Wheatley, and I autographed it for Dr. Wheatley, I said in the book that it is because of people like you why I write. Because you and Teacher Jenny have been keepers of the records, and I am inspired to do my little part to pass it on. And so I wrote this book, and apart from my immediate family, there were only about 4 persons who actually know I was writing the book before the book was finished. My friend Robert Natavius, Neil Smith, Clyde Leadsom, because I asked each one of them to review a chapter and they gave me their feedback. And none of them even knew how advanced I was in writing the book, because I was so committed to doing it and doing it on my own, because I had to prove to myself that I could learn to type. I had to prove myself that, and I believe I could type now. And so, you know, in my acknowledgement sections, I've mentioned a number of persons, but those are some of the persons who played a critical role in inspiring me. But back to Dr. Smith, because the book is really and truly about our experiences. And if you read the book, the last chapter in the book is dedicated basically to Dr. Smith, because I was playing man and taking on a big surgery on my own, and Dr. Smith was away. And when things weren't going wrong, I keep looking through the door hoping Dr. Smith would show up. And he wasn't showing up, and I was like getting a little antsy that, but he was overseas, so he couldn't show up. And so I had to pray and pray hard to get through it, and I eventually got through it. But the emphasis there was to say that in the years that almost 9 years Dr. Smith and I worked together in this hospital, the Old People's Hospital, we were the only 2 people, apart from Dr. Tattersall up on the hill, physically present in this country who could do any kind of surgery. And so when I came back home in 1986, and I worked for 2 years, you know, doing my part there, I realized that Dr. Smith was pretty much on his own doing all the work. So he said, when I go back to specialize in the field of obstetrics and gynecology, then maybe I could do a little extra work in surgery so we could help out each other. So I did 6 months in general surgery when I was training. So when I came back, I was in a much better position to work along with and help Dr. Smith in the work that we were doing. But why that was important is because we lived in the operating room basically. If it was his operating time, I'm on the other side. And if it was my time, he was on the other side. You know, except when, you know, we didn't need each other. and one of the nurses will help out. But we had grown so involved in working together. In the middle of the night, the phone rang, and I heard Dr. Smith's voice on the other side. He didn't have to tell me come. I'm already out of the bed, answering the phone, putting on my clothes, literally running out of the house without even washing my face, because he wouldn't call me in the middle of the night unless he really needed me. So he didn't have to tell me to come. We had such an understanding working together. If he called in the middle of the night, I could literally say, boss, I on the way, and hustle to get to the hospital. And that is the essence of this book. To tell those stories, to share, and hopefully inspire the next generation of doctors who are coming along. Because the hospital is named after Dr. Smith. So even if you don't know who he is, at least you know he's a person and he made a contribution. But no, this is my way of not only paying tribute, but also ensuring, Dr. Wheatley, that we pass it on. And I'm coming back to it in a minute, that we pass it on. Because it is so easy, especially for the younger doctors, when you come back, especially you come back from a high-class institution, to start looking down on what you find here. And it is so easy to say, teen got this, and teen got that, and teen got the other. But I spend a fair amount of my time speaking with the younger doctors, trying to encourage them. And I always go back to say, but when there was only the two of us, and I was speaking to young Dr. Brown the other day, and I was telling him that I didn't have no intern, I didn't have no resident. If one of the nurses called me, no matter where I was, I had to come. Didn't have a choice. And then those dreaded phone calls when any one of those senior nurses said, Dr. Pickering, come quick. You're shaking in your boots from the time you jump in the vehicle. Dr. Smith used to live right up there so he could run on the hill. But if I had to come from in the east, I shaking in my boots, trying to get to the hospital, because when one of them girls say, come quick, you know there's trouble on the other side. And in my business, sometimes it's only seconds before the worst of the worst happens. So Mr. Klein was an elderly gentleman I met back in 1987. He hailed from Seacoast. When I met him, he was in his late 80s. He had a chronic leg ulcer. And those were the times when we used to have the clinic and the emergency room, everything was one. And, so I ended up looking after him, and he knew what day I was working, so he only came on the days when I was working after a while, because he got attached to me. And he would come some days, and it wasn't my clinic day. And the nurses would say something like, well, Mr. Klein, Dr. Pickering not here today, let somebody say. And he would just simply say, it's all right. Just let Dr. Pickering know that I'm here. And he would sit there and wait. When you read the book, I speak about him in the chapter called Dignity. He was a very dignified gentleman. He had no children. He lived with his family in Seacoast, but he had lived abroad for the better part of his life. Very dignified gentleman. And he carried himself well. And he and I developed a bond, a friendship. So I told him, don't bring him to the hospital. I'll just come to the house and I'll take care of him at home. Because it was too much for them dropping him and picking up and all of that. And we developed even a greater bond. And then I went back out to study, so that we separated for a while. But every time I came home, I'd go look for him because, he had become a friend. And it was like about a year before I finally returned back home after I was studying. And I came for a few days and I went to look for him. And the afternoon I got there, he was sitting in his chair outside with his head down, like he was sleeping. And I said to his niece, I will come back as he's sleeping out and stuff. She said, no, he's not sleeping. He's relaxing. So I stepped up to him and I said, Mr. Klein, his head was down. He never held up his head. He said, Dr. Pickering, I knew you would come. He didn't hold up his head. He hadn't looked at me yet. I knew you would come. I was praying for you. I pray for you night and day. So I sat down and we engaged in a conversation. And he inquired, how I was doing, where I was in my studies. And all this time, he's just talking, he never opened his eyes, he maybe look at me once or twice, but he just deep in his thoughts. And we discussed it, and I told him, what I was doing, etc. He realized I was doing some surgery. And then before I left, that gentleman told me something that has stayed with me ever since, and I wrote it in the book. He says, Dr. Pickering, as long as you live, you never ever put a knife on anybody without you praying. You understand that. You remember that. I pray for you night and day. Never ever operate on anybody without you praying. And then he went on to say, and then when others see you getting by in life, they will wonder, but you always remember to give praise where praise is due. And so, you read the book and you try to understand where all this inspiration comes from. Those were the kinds of persons that I met along the way in my journey. The elderly lady who was terminally ill when I saw her, and I again used to visit her because she couldn't come to the hospital. There was too much pain for her to come to the hospital, and oh God, she was in so much pain. I used to take the medication to give her. And near the end, she said to me, Dr. Pickering, I don't want no more medication. Dr. Pickering, I don't want no more medication. I just want to go home. I can't take the pain no more, Dr. Pickering. I want to go home. Because she believed that the medication was keeping her alive. And her family said in the middle of the night she would scream for the pain, and they wanted to take her to the hospital. She didn't want to go to the hospital. And when they called me the final time, I rushed with my medication because they can't bear it no more. And by the time I got there, she had passed away. How can you interpret that? So I say in the book that I don't know whether you believe in this thing called faith or not. And by the way, the name of the book came from my author. She was the one over the time who said, but I realize you're a man of faith. Have you ever thought of writing a book about faith? I said, me write a book about faith? You don't say that, keep your mouth shut. Okay. She said, have you ever thought that by writing a book about faith you might inspire somebody else in their faith? I said, me? Because me want to write a book about religion and sound like no preacher and all that stuff. But over time, we developed that bond, and then, the stories emanated, and then that's how. So the name of the book was literally our thought processes, and then we worked together to put all the details together. So the walk in faith is hopefully, and if you ask the question why I have the book signing, the official book signing here at the hospital, is because of that. I wanted to dedicate the book to the hospital and to inspire those of us who are still here and those to come, that we could make this institution something special. I believe I sincerely believe that we are going to build a great little nation. I believe that, and this is one of the cornerstones. I believe that though your beginnings are small, your great will be your end. And so I try my level best. You know, I've never been motivated. Probably I spent too much time around Dr. Smith. Never been motivated to make money. Because we are public servants at heart, you know, and we've been dedicated to do the best we could. And maybe that's one other reason why, you know, I've been around here and continue to stay. I like interacting with the young doctors. I'm so inspired and happy when I see another one come back home. I immediately engage them in a conversation and try to encourage them. And so my closing shots would be along that pathway. How do I inspire the next generation of doctors to build this institution and make it something great? Not something good, something great. Because I read something that has inspired me that says, you know, your success is not the height of the mountain that you've climbed, but it is the length of the journey that you've taken to get to that summit. And so we've come a long way, and I would love to. I've tried to encourage, especially doctors in my specialty, Dr. Nosa, Dr. Reggae, and others, to start publishing some of the work that we've got. We've done some really good work in this hospital. The story needs to be told. And so I've been trying to encourage them, let's do some research, you know, with the work. There are a lot of retrospective, you know, surveys that we can do to show that we're doing good work in this little corner of God's vineyard. To encourage the younger doctors to think creatively, not only about their own futures, about the future of the health services in the country. And therefore, if we brighten this little corner where we are, it will shine a light on the rest of the nation, because it was Robert JFK who said, some people look at things and wonder why. Others dream of things that are not and wonder why not. And that's what I'd love to continue to do, to encourage the next generation of professionals, no matter the field of endeavor. The structure is there. We just need to make it work, and make it work in a way that all of us can be proud. And so, walk in faith and medicine, I tried to show that, you know, physicians are human beings too. And when I was doing this writing, my editor Carrie said she gave me some homework to do in research, and she said I only found one book that deals with this sort of issue, and it was entitled Doctors Cry Too. There wasn't much else in the area of how doctors cope with difficult situations. And the feedback that I continue to get about the book tells me that maybe we have cracked open a door that can now lead us down some pathways that have never been explored. I try to deal with the subject of termination of pregnancy, a sticky, sticky subject. And my friend Robert said I left the reader hanging because I didn't tell him what my own position was on the various issues. But maybe it's even difficult to say that. And then another friend of mine I was talking to when I was traveling, you know, said to me that you have got to deal with the moral dilemmas that doctors face. And that's what Carrie is speaking about. They don't teach us much about that kind of thing in medical school. How do you cope with your own moral dilemmas? How do I, sitting in my office, somebody comes to me seeking an abortion because they got pregnant and they don't want to be pregnant, and I don't practice abortions and I don't necessarily believe in it. Do I sound the least compassion and tell them go find a doctor who could do it? Do I just dismiss it and turn them out of place and should keep the child? They don't teach you much of that stuff in medical school. And as a physician, you have a professional responsibility to ensure that if you don't provide services, you have to refer the patient to a physician that does that. And every time I have to refer somebody who's seeking an abortion to another doctor, I have to ask myself, did I do the right thing based on my own conscience, my own belief system? Pastor Anthony, did I do the right thing? Bishop Klein, did I do the right thing? I ask myself those difficult questions. And I can't sit there, but they don't teach you that stuff in medical school. And that's the moral dilemma that the book kind of deals with. And that's what she's hinted at, that maybe in the next book I write, I should deal with those issues in a deeper sense. And therefore they should have that book to teach medical schools about those difficult issues, life and death situations that we have to face. And so that's the story of where it's at, and that's the story of where I will end today. I really am overwhelmed by your presence. I was told that I have to read something from the book, just to show that I have the book. I will read something from the book. But before I do that, Premier, I have to acknowledge the Premier's presence. Sir, thank you for showing up. I didn't acknowledge the Honorable Marlon Penn because he says my cousin, not as Honorable Marlon Penn. But you are acknowledged, sir. And so I will read a little bit from the introduction of the book. And it says, "Are you sure you are going to be okay?" My wife asked me as she was being wheeled into the operating room. I was the surgeon who was about to perform an emergency cesarean section on my beloved spouse. Not by choice, of course, but because I was the only practicing obstetrician at the time in our small Caribbean community hospital. Yes, Dr. Smith was there. And I looked at her and I said, "But you can't have faith and don't have faith." That was my response to her. There wasn't the time or the luxury to even think about any emotional involvement. We had to proceed and trust that everything would be all right. Bertie, I think you were there. And this was one of many examples during my years of practice where I grappled with the subject of faith and the mystery of it all. I have wrestled continually with the biblical imperative that says, and I quote, "To seek God first and all other things you want will seek after you." Unquote. How do I do that in a world where everyday living calls for work, mortgage payments, childcare, growing bills in the hustle and bustle to enjoy the so-called good life? I am a medical doctor. I am trained to take care of others and not necessarily myself. And as I continue to help others, I've come to realize I need to care for myself, or I shall perish as well, sooner rather than later. And this is why I began to write. It is my release. I commit the book to your reading. I'm happy to take your feedback whenever you read it, and encouragement or criticisms. I thank you all for coming. I'm deeply honored that you all showed up here this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Dr. Kedrick Pickering, Walk in Faith and Medicine. I have to tell you that, Dr. Pickering, I'm disheartened, having heard that they can tell when my book is AI generated, which means now I have to start all over, Dr. Pickering. And I was well advanced with my book, the title of which is God Looks Out for Fools and Children, and I Ain't a Child. I'll have to start over. I also want us to give a healthy round of applause for our homegrown professionals who helped to shape what we now have as healthcare in the Virgin Islands. Dr. D. Orlando Smith, Dr. Irad Potter, Dr. Hesketh Vanterpool, Dr. Hubert O'Neill, the late Dr. Don Bruley, and of course, our very own Dr. Kedrick Pickering. Dr. Pickering gave us a snapshot of what it was like back then to provide care to the community. And having heard that, it gives us a greater appreciation for the book, because when you think of how many of us survived to now, all we could have said is, but God. But God. Dr. Pickering is willing to take some questions from the audience, but before we do that, I'm going to open the floor briefly for a few persons to come and give congratulatory remarks to Dr. Pickering. Going once. Premier? We know you're good at speaking extemporaneously. Come and give congratulatory remarks to Dr. Pickering.
Good evening, everyone. I acknowledge Honorable Marlon Penn, and of course the man of the hour, Dr. Kedrick Pickering, former Deputy Premier, member of the House of Assembly. And I want to acknowledge all of you distinguished guests here and say from the bottom of my heart, congratulations on this, this very important endeavor. I could tell just by you speaking how much of a special experience it was for you, not just completing the book, but the entire process. I could tell how much it means to you. That certainly came across very strongly. And you are a very talented individual, so I should not be so surprised that in this endeavor you have shown your immense talent. Even in, I would imagine this is your first book reading, but even in doing a book reading, you can really see the talent. And I would say to you that you're speaking about walking in faith and medicine. Writing this book was a journey in faith for you, and certainly I would say that that's something that you will be richly rewarded in, because certainly I would say that we can expect more books from you, and that it is something indeed that is a God-blessed undertaking, and you can tell that just by the content of what you have written. Another reflection, we know that whenever you speak about building this great little nation. And certainly nation building has so many aspects to it. And in this endeavor, I see that you're not only telling your personal journey, but you're speaking about the journey of nation building in medicine. And in that, I would say that you're definitely a nation builder and a hero in these Virgin Islands. And I want to express, because of course this doesn't just seem like a book, it seems like a tribute to nation builders in medicine, including persons like Dr. Smith, and I was very much moved by your words for Dr. Smith as well. I want to take this opportunity as well to celebrate you, Dr. Pickering, to celebrate Dr. Smith, Dr. O'Neill, Dr. Vanterpool, and all the other persons who you have acknowledged, all of those persons who helped to build this medical profession in this Virgin Islands. Let's give them a round of applause, please. And I'll have to say as well, whenever I see you, and this is something, when multiple persons tell you something, that's actually God speaking to you. When so many different persons tell you the same thing, you know, and I often tell Dr. Pickering that we expect him to join the ranks of those persons who are, as you have said, keepers of the record. Persons who write our history. That is a special undertaking. And I was just at a book launching for Warner Penn Mall, and a few of them were there, and I paid tribute to them. And certainly it is a very noble undertaking, because we might take it for granted now, but there'll be persons in the future who will know nothing about how everything that is here got here. So those persons who choose to write, it's a very important undertaking. And Dr. Pickering, I personally thank you for writing this book. God bless you. God bless this book. God bless this book. May many copies be sold in the presently and in the years to come. God bless you.
Thank you, Premier Wheatley. We'll invite brief remarks from Dr. D. Orlando Smith and Dr. Wheatley. So following Dr. Smith, we'll have Dr. Wheatley, and we'll have Honorable Penn, and one other individual identified herself. So you two? All right, Chimo.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really indeed been a pleasure for me to be here to sit and listen to Dr. Pickering describe how he got to writing his book. I've always thought about things like that myself, but I've been too busy doing other things. Actually, I noticed during the past year that Dr. Pickering would be in his office a bit late in the evening. And I see the office would be closed, there would be no patients. So, but now I understand what he was doing. I reckon he believed that if he went home, his wife would say, come and have dinner, come and do this. And where's the son? He would have to entertain him. And he needed that time alone to be able to give his full concentration on what he was doing. So I really do admire you for that, congratulate you. We've had some trying times together working in People's Hospital. And difficult times were also times which were very enjoyable and rewarding. He would assist me and I would assist him. As he says, when I was a little difficult. When he was away, I would have to have the assistance, of course, of the nurses who were there, who were all very good at what they did. And together we made people what it was. We did actually do a lot of work. And I'm listening to what you do nowadays and say, what? We did a lot of work. One of the things that, when I heard Dr. Pickering speak about his experiences, I'd just like to give you this one experience before I leave. There was a flu, a bug going around in the BVI some years ago, if you remember that. And many people got this bug, including Sister Span and a lot of people. And the night before I went to hospital to do surgery, I was lying in my bed and I almost fell off because of this virus. Several people got it. And after that, I felt fine, nothing was wrong. And then I go to the hospital and we're doing a rather complicated bit of surgery. Dr. Pickering, my assistant. And in the middle of the surgery, this thing really hit me. I was dizzy, I was sweating, and I had to sit down and guide Dr. Pickering through the operation, which, he did very well. And when it came time to close up, when there's nothing else to worry about, I said, I gotta go. And I took off in my Jeep, straight from side to side of the road until I got home. And I was really sick. But thank God I recovered and everything as well. So that was an experience that I would never forget, where I actually had to rely on Dr. Pickering's assistance. Together we did a lot of work, and I think personally I was had to be able to help a lot of people in this territory. Do a lot of surgery that had never been done before here, on people's veins, their hands, their head, those sort of things. And I thought it was a privilege and a commitment by me as part of this community. It wasn't about money, it was about serving the people's community. So again, congratulations, Dr. Pickering. Keep the good work up.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and we'll invite Dr. Wheatley.
Good evening, everyone. I am not going to say anything from in the field of medicine, because I don't know anything about medicine. But I am going to say this, which I know you all do not know. Congratulations to my first cousin. Now, think about that. How he come my first cousin? Well, my father and his mother were brothers and sisters, not by blood as such, because my grandmother was his mother's foster mother, but we grew up that way. So I'm very proud to see what my cousin has achieved. And I'm serious about that. He knows how I feel about him. And I don't think anybody else in the family at all feel that about him that much. The other thing is, I would say, we as educators educate our masters. And here is a very good example of where I have seen myself being involved in educating one of my masters. It is very encouraging. And I am very serious about this. And I am passionate about it. And I speak about it often. That we are not empowering our people enough in this British Virgin Islands. And I'm not going to sit down on it. And I was very glad of the remarks I heard from my cousin about empowering his people in his profession. Because that's what we are here for in this world, to lift up those with whom we have to work and those with whom we come in contact. For all the years that I've been in my field of education, I don't think anybody can tell you that I have ever, in any way, put a stumbling block in anybody's way of trying to push them down. Because God didn't put me here for that. And I would like to say, brother, I thank you for that, if nothing else. And sharing your work is one way of helping to inspire and empower us. Those who are in the profession as well as those who are outside of the profession. I know all of us will be better off when we have read and digest, read, swallow, and digest that book. So I would like to just offer you my sincere congratulations as your cousin.
All right, cousin, thank you. Honorable Penn. Cousin, too.
Pleasant good evening. I acknowledge the Premier. He's a politician, has already spoken, so I won't speak as a politician today. And the honoree and the author, world bestseller. What a thing. Yes, I am the biological cousin. Dr. Pickering is actually cousin, and I'm here speaking on behalf of both the Fred and the Pickerings, because we're cousins on the Pickering side and we're cousins on the Fred, because his mom and my grandmother were sisters, so we're that close. So when people hear us say that we're that close. And Kedrick and Dr. Pickering has always been a source of strength and inspiration to our family. Always has been someone who we've always admired, looked up to, and always been proud of his accomplishments. He's always been someone that the glue sort of that brought all of us together, Dr. Pickering, and we're due for a Fred gathering, because I think we've separated a bit and we need to get back together. But we're all here, many of us are here today, and we're proud of your accomplishments. I have not, thank God if I need to, never had to go on the knife for Dr. Pickering. But if I need to, he would be one of the persons, and Dr. Smith, who would say, Dr. Smith, I thank you for your contributions as well to this facility and to this territory. That would like to operate on me. I saw Dr. Pickering in action. I have one child, a son, and Dr. Pickering is the one who delivered my son. And I went into the room, he told me I could come in so I could document the moment. I don't think I got a camera turned on yet. But just to see the way that Dr. Pickering operated in our operation room, from the time that we were there and Joy was ready to deliver, and Dr. Pickering came calm, collective, and I'm here panicking, calm, collective, just minutes, literally minutes before Jamal was born, he just came in calm and cool and just did his thing without a breeze. And we're so privileged to have a skilled physician like Dr. Pickering operating within this territory. I just want to say, because you know this, you bring me in this profession called politics, you won't leave me. But again, I am so immensely proud of you and your accomplishment, particularly with this book, but just in general. You made the point earlier that you never in your wildest dream imagined to have such a facility like what we have here today. But you not just in your work as a physician, you in your work as a politician made this facility a reality, and I think we need to give him our applause. So again, Doc, because Master Physician, on behalf of the Fred, the Pickering family, on behalf of the Eastern Hall community, on behalf of the entire Virgin Islands, we're extremely proud of your accomplishments. We're extremely proud of this book that you've written, and I can't wait to read this book and really experience the experiences that you have lived and shared with Dr. Smith and many other physicians and nurses who are by your side during this process, and your entire family, I'm sure, played a role in this as well. Alice, thank you for lending him to us during this period. He's been a source of strength and treasure to all of us. Again, congratulations, cuz, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Honorable Penn. I would say don't talk too soon, because he might come back and write a book about that too. I know that makes the premiers nervous, but all right. do we have your nephew and then Don with somebody else? So we'll take 3 more, Dr. Pickering, is that okay? And then we will move on. Because Dr. Pickering has to do the book signing for those of you who purchased the books. And then Dr. Pickering, maybe they can ask their questions then in the interest of time. All right. So from cousins to nephew.
Good night. Me and my brother would like to congratulate our uncle on making a book that is internationally 7 countries bestseller. That is an achievement. And I really am amazed at the stuff that my uncle does. He helps me and my brother to do things that me and my brother would normally be scared to do. Like right now, I would not be up here if my uncle wasn't here. And I would love for my uncle to make another book, because the book he made, I read a couple pages and it was nice. I hope everybody here would read the book intently and enjoy what you read, because this is a man to behold.
If ever there was an endorsement, that's one. Read it intently. And Dr. Pickering is already inspiring even generations way below. All right, come now, Ms. Korea.
Good evening, everyone. So I am not cousin or niece, but I have had the privilege of calling Dr. Pickering my physician, my doctor, my OBGYN. He delivered my 3 children. He cut my belly open, because that's how I tell my son. And he loves to hear the story when I tell him how Dr. Pickering had to cut my belly open to take him out. And I remember when I had gallstones right after I had my first daughter, 30 years ago, Dr. Pickering, so you're old. And and I said, I had gotten close to Dr. Pickering. Oh, Dr. Pickering was also my counselor, by the way. Auntie Alice was very upset with that, because he was counseling me, and I said, Dr. Pickering, we need to go, it's a lot of time. He said, I is the doctor. And so I'm indebted to him for that. But when I had to do my gallbladder surgery, because he was my physician, he said, well, Dr. Smith can do the surgery for you, you know. I said, yeah, but I didn't think I want to do it if you ain't going to be there. He said, don't worry, in good hands. I said, well, Dr. Pickering, you're going to be there? He said, I'm going to be there. And that calmed me a whole lot. But I want to say that I'm not surprised that Dr. Pickering did this. I always had a sense of peace and calm around him. I've recommended him to so many. He delivered my granddaughter as well. And there's something I always say to refer to Dr. Pickering as a physician. He's a consummate professional. He's a professional, you know. And as a young mother, coming to a male physician for what I was coming to, you know, he kept it, the professionalism was so high that it just, you know. So Dr. Pickering, congratulations. He didn't deliver my nephew, who is now a doctor, but I'm glad Jamoy, Dr. Sanders Correa, is here. He was his physician at one point in time. And so be inspired, Jamoy, to do great things, because Dr. Pickering and all the others have laid the foundation and blazed the trail for you. So Dr. Pickering, congratulations, and I love you, and I'm looking forward to reading the book tonight and reading many more.
Good evening to all. I stand here to publicly congratulate Dr. Pickering. I am so proud of you. One evening, Dr. Pickering walked into the funeral home and he came up to me, and I found it strange because normally he would come in and he would just greet you silently. But he came over to me and he stretched out his arm around me and he said, I have something to show you. And he went in his phone and he showed me the book cover, and I was overjoyed. I just have to say that publicly. I was overjoyed. I am so excited when I see persons writing books, because it takes a lot of commitment and dedication, and I'm delighted to have another local colleague when it comes to authorship. So Dr. Pickering, I would like to say, continue on your journey. There is much more for you to accomplish. May the good Lord bless you, bless your book abundantly above all you may ask or think, and may the generations that follow you be blessed. God bless you.
Thank you so much. She scared me a bit because when she said Dr. Pickering came to the funeral home, I thought, what dedication does he make house call at the funeral home? Dr. Pickering, that's a level of faith that you'll be walking in. Raising people from the dead and treating them, you know. At this time, it is my pleasure to invite to the lectern our friends of Dr. Pickering, Doctors Marcia Potter and Aaron Potter. They will be given closing remarks and vote of thanks, and immediately following, you can have your book signed by Dr. Pickering. Put your hands together for the Potters.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure for both Irad and I to give some closing remarks on behalf of Kedrick this evening, and I guess I was also asked to give the vote of thanks. And they usually say ladies before gentlemen, but tonight it's going to be the gentleman before the ladies. So,
good evening. I'm going to read, because if I begin to speak, I might cry, and you might be here longer then. And if I read, I'll confine myself to what's on this paper. It's a privilege. Kedrick, if Washasha was here, he would say, a long look we come from. As a child, I grew up knowing that there were those who thought nothing good would come out of Langluk. Nothing good, count them. Most of the people in this room who are BVL landers have an affiliation with Langluk. So I don't know how anybody could have that thought. So many memories. We grew up in a nurturing environment where there were no fences. Every and any adult could correct you. My journey with Kedrick started in our boyhood days, and there were many lessons along the way. Boyhood days, school days, Sunday school, basketball. Speaking about going off to university. School introduced us to I would be true, for there are those who trust me. Kedrick introduced me to Khalil Gibran, the prophet. My mother introduced me to poems and songs. Home and Sunday school introduced us to teachings of faith and love. And my own mantra, to thine own self be true. Every person, every man my brother, every woman my sister. Kedrick, I read most of the book, and a lot of emotions because everything Kedrick wrote there, I could find a similar story to tell. A very difficult thing to be from a very small country where you have the responsibility and you end up being on call every single day. I don't think unless you've had to do that you would understand what it means that every single day you could be called. And as I read through the book, I relived a lot of memories. I remember one night I came back to the hospital 5 times. I drove from Easton 5 times. And when Kedrick says, you have to remember, I always put it this way, we are people too. ZBVI introduced me to Desiderata. Keep peace with your soul. Life and its challenges introduced us to empathy. Every man, my brother, inasmuch as you've done it for the least of these. So many similarities in our paths. Over the years, we developed an enduring friendship, and I always admired the support Kedrick had from his family, particularly Celia, because when I came home, Celia was always there to inquire and to send something back to Kedrick. Kedrick recognized that to whom much is given, much is expected. He told us through this book of his journey many lessons, at times face to face with his own mortality. And deep down, he came to the realization that he is people too, with feelings and emotions. And that every sacrifice was a journey of love. Love for the people of this country. Those who paved the way for us to become physicians. Public servants, always. This book launch opens a bridge to another phase of Kedrick's life. My brother, I am deeply proud of you. It has always been that when Kedrick has difficult decisions to make, we would have a chat. He would call and say, I spoke, but I come to hear what you have to say. And remembering those days we spent together in Jamaica, when things were extremely difficult, because sometimes there just wasn't any money, and we had to depend on one another. Kedrick, you will continue to have struggles, as that is an undeniable feature of life. Past challenges have shaped you and made you more resilient. And so, as you go forth, remember the admonition in the 3rd stanza of the school song. Continue to be faithful through each passing moment, constantly in touch with God. Be strong to follow where He leads you and continue in faith to keep the path Jesus trod. Congratulations, my brother. Always remember, hold on to what you believe, otherwise you fade. I like to quote one stanza from a song, one of my favorite songs. I'll read it. It's called Hold On by Dan Hill. When the night creeps in so hollow, when the silence makes you scream, when you're so damn scared of failure, when the world's burnt out its saviors, when you're feeling too vulnerable to dream, it's then you got to hold on to what you believe in. Hold on, don't let it fade. Be strong, find yourself a reason. You may never change the world as you imagine, but just the same, you got to hold on stronger or else you fail. As I stand here this afternoon, I am immensely proud of Kedrick's endeavor and achievement. I'll never forget the times we spent together when little was much, because we could share and we could depend on each other. There are lots that I could say that would shock you, because we shared a lot over those years. When Kedrick returned, it was difficulty adjusting to being at the beck and call of the entire community. And so sometimes he would ask me to respond or call somebody. I remember the day Kedrick that passed, and it was difficult for me. Kedrick called, and when I had to call him that his dad had passed, my brother, congratulations. I've listened to a lot of criticisms over the years of Kedrick, but you've never walked in his shoes. You've never had to trod the journey that he trod. So my brother, hold on to what you believe in. Don't let it fade. Congratulations.
Okay, my dear husband told you what happens when he doesn't stick to the script. I'm going to stick to mine. Now, we've heard all about the relationships tonight, the cousin and the nephew. But some of you in here may not know that while Kedrick was in medical school at the University of the West Indies, Kedrick became my adopted brother, as so did Alice, my adopted sister. I'm not sure which one came first, but that's another story. Our home in Jamaica became a central location to welcome the Virgin Islands students, and many of them came to know my parents. For Kedrick, a special bond developed, especially between him and my mom, and so he had an open invitation to my parents' home in the countryside. In fact, I think if Kedrick asked for a key to the house, he would have been given a key, while the girls never got keys to the doors of the house. I understand to an extent the struggles he refers to in his book. As being the wife of a doctor myself, who also at one point was the only pediatrician at Peebles Hospital, I often saw that struggle with helping and hoping and praying for the best outcome. A few years ago, I was asked to be the keynote speaker at a Fire and Safety Week ceremony addressing the firemen in our country. And I asked the question, who takes care of the carer? And that question is still open today, and Kedrick speaks to that to some extent in his book. As a mother who has lost a newborn, I was asked by Kedrick to reach out to other mothers. And at the time, I questioned him. And I questioned myself whether I could do this, and I struggled within myself. And I asked God if he really thought I could do this. I sought counsel from Irad, who encouraged me to do the best I can, as I might be the one person who can reach out and help bring some peace. Kedrick continued to encourage me, and when I told him yes, I saw relief in his eyes. He may not think that I saw it, but I saw the relief. I forged many friendships as a result, and especially with that very first mother. So thank you, Kedrick. And I thank Sister Benjamin, who worked with me and along with Kedrick supported me during this period. My brother Kedrick, you have done well to put your thoughts on paper for others to partake. I believe that this book, Walk in Faith and Medicine, is a catalyst which others will begin to look more deeply into their own faith and begin their journey to find answers to their struggles. So on behalf of Tinny and Ruby, of blessed memory, my parents, whose spirits I am sure are here with you, and the rest of the family, heartfelt congratulations. My brother, the journey continues. Enough love. And ladies and gentlemen, it brings me to the point where I was asked to say thank you to all of you. So first let me just, on behalf of Kedrick, Alice, and the family, say thanks to all of you who took part in this evening's launch. Mr. Grange, who was the Master of Ceremonies, thank you to Pastor Mel, as I call him. I'm not going to go through it. Pastor Mel, thank you for the prayer. Kayla for the territorial song. Carrie, who left us online, but thank her for all the work she did with Kedrick. June, and all the other persons who offered remarks, and to all of you who have come out this evening to share with Kedrick and his family. Heartfelt thank you. It warms Kedrick's and Alice's hearts, I am sure, to see so many of you come out to give your support to Kedrick and the launch of this book. And I really want to encourage you to buy the book. Please buy the book, read it. It's going to mean a lot when you take in those words. Again, thank you all so very much for coming out this